Well, good morning, everyone, and what a crowd we have here today. I've never seen so many people since a Bryan Adams concert. It must be a big show in town here today. My name is Mark Eiching. I'm the chair of the Trade Committee, and on behalf of all our members, we welcome anybody that's here today, anybody that's covering this committee meeting, and of course anybody out there watching us. First of all, I'd also like to welcome, we have two ambassadors with us here today. The ambassador from Mexico and the ambassador from Taiwan. Our committee is a very active committee. Of course, everybody knows Canada is a trading nation, but over the last few years, since this Parliament, we've had a lot on our plate dealing with the European Trade Agreement, TPP, and of course, right now our focus is on present and future relationships in North America trade with our trading partners, United States and Mexico. Just a few housekeeping things. I know we have a bigger crowd than usual, but we have translation here. If you are not sitting in one of those green chairs and you need translation, there is headphones in the back for you. Also, just remind everybody there's no photographs allowed to be taken during this meeting. So, why are we meeting here in the middle of the summer? Well, this is a very important time for Canada with us, with the United States and Mexico, and we've invited the minister responsible for the United States, Foreign Affairs Minister, to be here today. We welcome you, and I hear you brought your officials here. You have been very busy, and we've known you very well between the other trade agreements. You've been very gracious to be here anytime we needed you here, so thank you for coming. And also, personally, I commend the work and the team that you're putting together on these future negotiations. So without further ado, Minister, welcome, and you have the floor.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mark, and I'd really like to thank the whole committee for being here. As Mark has said, Monday in precisely the middle of August is not generally a time when intense committee hearings are held, and I take it as a sign of the really hard work and real commitment that every member of this committee has to a great outcome for your constituents and for all Canadians in these talks, that you've brought us together here. It's a privilege and an honor for me to be here to speak to you, and I want to thank everyone who is here. As Mark has pointed out, it's a pretty full room for a summertime committee meeting, and that also speaks to I think how consequential these talks are for Canadians. So I'd like to make some opening remarks, and then I'm happy to answer your questions. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're gathered on the traditional territory of the Algonquin. La commerce concerne les personnes.
Trade concerns individual. It consists of creating optimal conditions to encourage growth and prosperity of individuals and workers and families. That is why we are modernizing NAFTA. That is why we are seizing this opportunity to improve upon an agreement that is already good. The NAFTA agreement has become the largest one in North America. Canada, the United States, and Mexico jointly represent 1/4 of global GDP, and they represent only 7% of the world's population. Since 1994, trade among NAFTA partners has nearly tripled. This regional market is worth $19 billion and represents 470 consumers. Canada market is 2.5% higher than it would be, 2.5 times greater than it would be otherwise. Canada receives annually $20 billion. Because of NAFTA, the North American economy is highly integrated. Our competitiveness on the market has increased, and conditions have improved on the continent.
We're keen to get to work, not least because we know that uncertainty is never good for our economy. We've explained to our southern friends, and many of you have been part of that effort, at every opportunity, that Canada is the largest export market for 2/3 of U.S. states and America's biggest overall customer. by far. Indeed, Canada buys more from the US than China, the UK, and Japan combined. I think quite a few of us have uttered that sentence in recent months. Our American partners have been listening. Today they understand, as we do, that our relationship, the greatest economic partnership in the world, is balanced and mutually beneficial. To wit, in 2016, Canada and the United States traded $635.1 billion worth of goods and services. That exchange was almost perfectly reciprocal. In fact, the United States ran a slight surplus with us of $8.1 billion, less than 1.5% of our total trade. So really very, very balanced. We've also been working energetically with our Mexican friends, and I'd like to welcome the Mexican ambassador, my friend Dionisio, whose birthday we celebrated together in Mexico City. The relationship, including celebrating Dionisio's birthday, and the Foreign Minister and Minister of Economy and Trade were present at that lunch, has of course also included regular conversations between Prime Minister Trudeau and Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto. Most importantly, we have been listening to Canadians. As of today, we have sought and received more than 21,000 submissions of Canadians' views and concerns about NAFTA. That includes contributions from 16 academics and think tanks, 158 associations, and 55 businesses and corporations. The Canadian objectives I will now outline are built on these extensive consultations. This process is just beginning. Our negotiations with our NAFTA partners will be informed by continuous consultations with Canadians. So, here are some of Canada's core objectives. First, we aim to modernize NAFTA. The agreement is 23 years old. The global, North American, and Canadian economies have been transformed in that time by the technology revolution. NAFTA needs to address this in a way that ensures we continue to have a vibrant and internationally competitive technology sector, and that all sectors of our economy can reap the full benefits of the digital revolution. Deuxièmement, l'ALENA devrait être plus progressive.
Secondly, the agreement must be more progressive. We must focus on the principles of CETA, the most progressive trade agreement in the world's history. This was started undertaken by the Conservatives and finished by our government. More particularly, we can make NAFTA more progressive. First of all, by inserting labor protection mechanisms into the heart of the agreement. Secondly, by integrating environmental protection measures to ensure that the member countries can benefit from protecting the environment and investments. For example, we can fully support efforts to target climate change. Thirdly, by adding a new chapter on gender equality in accordance with our commitments on the matter. Fourthly, by adding a chapter on Aboriginals in accordance with our commitment to improve our relationship with the First Nations peoples. And finally, by reforming the dispute resolution mechanisms between investors and states to ensure that governments have the right to dictate regulations in the public interest. One of the reasons for which these progressive elements are so important, in particular in the sectors of the environment and labor, means that they represent the way we guarantee that NAFTA modernizes. This will ensure that it is an exemplary accord and also one that is fair. In general, Canadians support free trade, but their enthusiasm wanes when trade agreements disadvantage our workers because of the high standards that we require. We must seek out trade agreements that are progressive, which benefit everyone and which help workers here and abroad to obtain better salaries and better conditions. Thirdly, this negotiation is a key opportunity to improve business on both sides of the borders. By streamlining administrative elements, we share the desire of the American government to rid the agreement of needless administrative measures, and we wish to reach this objective. Fourthly, Canada will seek to obtain more free markets, which we did in CETA. This is important. This can be unhealthy in the long term. We need to clean up public markets and create better harmonization of regulation.
Professionals, which is increasingly critical to companies' ability to innovate across blended supply chains easier. NAFTA's Chapter 16, which addresses temporary entry for business people, should be renewed and expanded to reflect the needs of our businesses. Here again, CETA provides a model. Sixth, Canada will uphold and preserve the elements in NAFTA that Canadians deem key to our national interest, including a process to ensure anti-dumping and countervailing duties are only applied fairly when truly warranted, the exception in the agreement to preserve Canadian culture, and Canada's system of supply management. In all of these discussions, we will come to the table with goodwill and Canada's characteristic ability and willingness to seek compromise and find win-win solutions. But we are committed to a good deal, not just any deal. Ainsi, j'aimerais dire aujourd'hui au
I would like to tell Canadians today what I will tell our trade partners on Wednesday. During these negotiations, our position will be aligned with our government's position. We will be courteous and we will be propelled by goodwill and the seeking of compromises. We also know that politeness and strength are not contradictory. It's no coincidence that hockey is our national sport. This is a very important time with heavy consequences for all of us. If these negotiations are well done, they will continue to create well-paid jobs for middle-income Canadians.
Us as a country. I've been astounded and moved by the extremely high level of support and collaboration I and my team have received from business, from labor, from civil society, from every level of government, and from many of you around this table, even though we may not, and in fact we are not all members of the same political party. Time and again, Canadians across the country have told me how proud they are to be Canadian at this moment in time and how committed they are to doing everything they can help in these consequential negotiations. Our bipartisan NAFTA Council is evidence of this. And all Canadians are truly fortunate that in these talks we will be represented by the best trade negotiators in the world. Canada's trade officials are internationally renowned for their prowess, and it is a privilege for me to work with this outstanding team of Canadian public servants. And let me take this moment to acknowledge the great Canadians who are sitting alongside me and with whom the committee will have a chance to speak directly later on. Tim Sargent, our Deputy Minister for Trade, Steve Verheuel, our Chief Negotiator for CETA and very familiar to many people in this room, Martin Moen, who is also working very hard on the softwood file in his spare time. Comme je l'ai dit, ces négociations sont lourdes.
As I said, these negotiations have significant consequences. There may be dramatic times. However, I am fully optimistic about the final result. My optimism rests on the fundamental reality. Economic relations between Canada and the United States are the most important, the most effective, and the most mutually beneficial in the entire world. We know this, and our American neighbors know it as well.
Those very strong economic fundamentals that I am essentially optimistic going into these negotiations. together with this fantastic team of trade negotiators, we're going to work very hard and we're going to get a great deal for Canadians. Thank you, and I'm happy now to take your questions.
Well, thank you, Minister. And before I start, I'd like to welcome Parliamentary Secretary Leslie here. And we have two visiting members to our committee. Mr. Nader, you're from Perth Wellington, and Madam Fortier, you're from Ottawa Vanier. Well, welcome. And so we're going to try to get everybody in, but the only way that's going to happen is we got to keep you under 5 minutes. So keep your questions tight so the Minister can have enough time to answer it, but I don't want to have to cut off a member or the Minister, but I'm going to try to keep it to 5 minutes, and then so everybody can get a shot at this. Okay, so we're going to start off with the Conservatives. They're up first, and we got Mr. Hoback for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate your comments about keeping things tight. I'll do the best I can, but 5 minutes was such a big topic. First thing, Minister, I want to compliment you. Put together a good team with Steve Verhool and Martin and Tim, and putting Christine Hill in the U.S. I think it's been a wise move and shows that we're focused on the file, so I can compliment you on that. The second thing I also want to talk about is, how we've been working together in making sure the U.S. understands how important this relationship is and how well that's gone. I think the Americans now at the governor level, for sure, definitely understand what's at stake. And I think after Trump gave his second notice of canceling NAFTA, that all of a sudden the business community, both in Canada and the U.S., woke up and said, wait a minute, there's something very serious going on here. And that's what makes this so different than any other trade deal. This is a renegotiation. And I think you comprehend that the fact that this is a type of situation where if we don't get it right, things will actually go backwards instead of moving forwards. And I think that's what's concerning the business community, is how do we move forward. So I think I'm going to get into a little bit about the process of consultations, what we're doing to make sure that we've consulted properly, we're properly prepared, and then what are we doing while the negotiations are ongoing to make sure that we keep people actively involved in this file, or not actively involved, actively informed on what is happening, what things are playing. And then, Minister, I'd like to have some idea of the outcomes. What do we expect to achieve at the very end for the business community so that when they look forward, they can say, you know what, after this deal is done, Canada is now even more competitive in the global global marketplace, and Canada is better positioned to even do more exports around the world because we put everything together in a good NAFTA agreement. So 5 minutes is tight, so I'll have to be very quick, and then I have a few more questions also there. So let's start off with the process. How are you going to interact with this council? How are businesses, how are other groups going to be able to interact with the negotiators while the negotiations are ongoing?
Okay. Thank you very much, Randy, for that, as usual, highly informed question. And I do want to start by thanking you personally for your work, and also parties on the other side of the House. I really am grateful for the way that, particularly south of the border, we've been working together to advance the Canadian national interest. And I'm glad that you share with me acknowledging the excellence of our negotiators. And it's true also having Kirsten Hillman in Washington is an advantage. I'm not going to claim any credit for the excellence of our public service, particularly in that space. And I know that Jerry, sitting next to you, interacted a lot with Steve as agricultural minister, and I believe, Jerry, you won't contradict me when you say that we share. Well, you might on some things, but I don't think you'll contradict me when I say that we share with you the highest regard for our trade negotiators. It's really, really important. I just also want to pause on one thing that you mentioned, Randy, with which I agree very strongly. One of the particular aspects of this negotiation, which is different from previous big deals Canada has been involved in, is it is not a greenfield negotiation. In a greenfield trade agreement, of course, you want it to work because that has the possibility of bringing great benefit to Canadians. But as I said in my remarks this morning, this is more like renovating a house that you're still living in. And that makes it a really delicate operation. A great deal of our economy is based on the existing NAFTA. And that is something that we heard in our consultations leading up to this moment. Canadians are very aware of that. And I want to assure the committee that I and the team are very aware of the delicacy of what we are engaged in. You asked about the consultations. So let me start by saying we've been focused on two things. One, working hard with our partners and raising their awareness. We've been working hard with our Mexican partners. Dionisio, thank you for being here. And we've been focused very particularly on an outreach to the U.S. that you've been a part of. I just want to remind people, we've had 185 visits to the U.S. We've reached 300 U.S. decision makers, 200 members of Congress, 50 governors and lieutenant governors. On the outreach to Canadians, we've had more than 22,500 submissions from Canadians and contributions from academics and think tanks, 158 associations, and 55 corporations. As I said in my remarks earlier today, our intention is that the consultation with Canadians would be ongoing throughout the talks. The model here is very much CETA. That's why I'm turning to Steve. I think the CETA effort had an unprecedented level of stakeholder tables and ongoing consultations, and we're going to continue with that practice. I think people are aware, and let me say, in those consultations, labor, environment, Indigenous groups, and women will very much be included. I think people are aware of the NAFTA Council that we have set up.
Well, thank you, Minister. I'm sorry.
Have I run out?
We got to move on to another, but when you see that red light on, there's 15 seconds left, just to kind of give you a heads up.
Okay, which red one? Yours or
one
mine?
right at the top, yeah.
Mine, okay.
That'll
I'm
help
sorry.
you. No, that's no problem. We're going to move on to Liberals now, and Madam Ludwig, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I'm very honored to represent New Brunswick Southwest. Minister Friedland, as we've spoken before, New Brunswick and Maine share a very special connection and relationship. Our relationship with border states is integral to the communities on both sides of the border. We are each other's closest partners and neighbors. When we talk about renegotiating and modernizing NAFTA to reflect the 21st century, what is Canada doing to ensure that our businesses can continue to work closely together and that trade barriers do not impede the flow of goods and services? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And, you know, all of us have a stake in trade and a great trading relationship with the United States. But your New Brunswick constituency, I think, is particularly engaged and particularly important. The relationship, particularly between New Brunswick and Maine, is absolutely essential. You know that 38,500 Maine jobs depend directly on trade with Canada, and Canada is by far Maine's largest export market. I do want to offer a particular shout out, as we're talking about the New Brunswick-Maine relationship, to Governor LePage of Maine. I have been in close contact with him. I speak on the phone with him often. He is an influential voice in this administration, and he is a true, he understands very, very well the intense and interconnected relationship between Maine and Canada. He understands it in detail. He happens to have a personal background in the forestry sector, and that really informs his point of view in a very useful way. And he, I have found, has been a fantastic advocate of the relationship, of how important it is for Maine. And I have also found him not solely in conversation with me, but also in his advocacy in Washington, to be very good at explaining a key element of our relationship, economic relationship with the United States, which is we build things together. That is a key element, and it can sometimes be missed. People can think of trade as simply you make something in one country and you sell it to another. But the Canadian and U.S. economies are so closely integrated that what actually happens is we make things together. An input is produced in Canada and sold to the United States. More work is done on that input, it goes across the border. And that happens over and over and over again in the course of the creation of so many products. We're familiar with that from the auto industry, from manufacturing, but it's very true in New Brunswick's trade with the United States. And I think, you know, that's why your question is so important, because something that we have done successfully is make it possible for us to have that kind of a closely integrated, very effective commercial relationship. A core objective for Canada is not only maintaining that, but as I said in my remarks, using this negotiation as a real opportunity to make that kind of work even easier. One of the things that we have heard again and again in our consultations, that I heard when I was in Edmonton speaking to people from the agricultural sector on Friday, is cutting red tape, making it easier to trade, is something Canadians really, really see as concrete and a useful outcome. And usefully for us, one thing that we have heard repeatedly, both in direct conversations and publicly from this U.S. administration, is a real desire to cut red tape to make it easier for businesses to do business. So I think that area of cutting red tape, of making our economic connection even easier, is going to be one of our chief goals, and something that Canadians across the country, very much including in New Brunswick, are very, very keen for us to achieve.
Well, thank you very much, and we're going to move over to the NDP now, and Madam Ramsay, you have the floor.
Good morning, Minister. I'm pleased to see today that Canadians finally have some understanding of the priorities of the Canadian government, and so I thank you for sharing some of those with us, and look forward to the further priorities that you will reveal to Canadians as we move through this process. And I welcome, of course, the negotiators to the table as well. Nice to see all of you. Like my colleague, I'm someone who represents a border riding down in Essex in southwestern Ontario, and you certainly don't have to look far to find people who understand NAFTA, who have felt the negative impacts of NAFTA in the manufacturing sector, but businesses who have benefited from the flow of traffic across one of the largest, I believe the largest border crossing that we have in Canada, across the Ambassador Bridge, and soon to be Gordie Howe Bridge. So my question to you, you mentioned supply management, and the United States has, of course, released this long list of negotiating priorities, and from that list, we know that the Trump administration will be taking aim at our supply managed system. So your Liberal government has eroded supply management under CETA, and we're attempting to do so in the TPP. So I want you to be clear today, will you commit that you will not accept any further erosion of supply management through an expansion of tariff-free access for U.S. dairy, poultry or eggs, or any other mechanism?
So thank you for the question. It is a real service to Canada and to your constituents, Tracy, that you're on this committee, because I know you know very well and represent a constituency which understands and is involved in as much as any part of our country in this trading relationship. So I know you speak from a very informed place. On supply management, as I said repeatedly and as I said in our remarks today, our government is fully committed to supply management. Something that we have said both in public and in private to our American partners, which bears repeating today, is that, I spoke about, and it's an important point to underscore, the balanced and mutually beneficial nature of Canada's overall trading relationship with the United States. It is truly reciprocal. When it comes to dairy, the United States sells us far more than we sell them. It is,
and yet they still want further access.
Well,
so the question really is about whether we'll grant that.
It's important to point out to them, as we do both in private and in public, that when it comes to dairy today, the U.S. balance, the balance of trade there is 5-1 in the U.S. favor. So I would call that already a pretty good deal. And both I and my negotiators, who have great experience, in particular in the agricultural sector, are very aware of that. Something else that is very important, and that, again, we point out both in public and at the table and in our private conversations, is when it comes to dairy, Canada has our system of supply management for supporting the interests of our producers. The U.S. clearly does not have supply management, but the U.S. has its own system for supporting dairy producers in the United States.
Subsidization.
Dairy producers in the U.S. are beneficiaries of an extensive web of government supports. That is the reality as well. And I say that also, we remind our American partners of that fact when we enter into this conversation. But I think it's also worth pointing out to Canadians, because I have noticed that in some of the Canadian
Sorry,
discussion...
I don't want to interrupt you, but I have another question. I want to make sure I can get it in.
Okay, let me, Tracy, let me just
okay,
finish this,
you
because
can finish that thought.
I do want to get this point. I'm speaking now, I guess, particularly to our journalist friends. Where are they? Something that I feel may sometimes be missing from the public discourse in Canada is a full appreciation of the extent to which the U.S. dairy sector also benefits from an extensive network of subsidies.
Okay.
Their way of doing it, hang on, is different from ours, but there are significant government supports.
Okay.
Please.
My next question is around Chapter 11. Canada is the most sued country under investor-state dispute settlement provisions contained in NAFTA's Chapter 11, which allows companies to sue governments over anything that they think has reduced their profits. This includes taking aim at our environmental protections and health and safety. You know, this threat of challenges under Chapter 11 has had a very chilling effect on all levels of government.
Okay, you only have 15 seconds, so I think we should leave it at Minister.
Okay, so my question is, will you seek to remove Chapter 11 from the agreement?
So as I said in my remarks earlier today, Canada takes a strong interest in improving and making more progressive investor-state dispute settlement mechanisms. That is something that we were very proud to push hard on in CETA, and that is definitely an area that we are interested in pursuing here. In particular, of paramount importance is preserving a sovereign, democratically elected government's right to regulate.
Thank you, Minister. And we're going to go over to the Liberals. And Madame Lapointe, you have the floor.
Monsieur le Président. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Minister, for joining us this morning. I appreciate you being here with us today. To continue somewhat along the same lines, my riding, as you know, is close to Montreal. It's in a northern suburb. How will the Government of Quebec and the Government of Canada get involved in the negotiation of NAFTA? We all know that Quebec was involved in CETA. I would like to hear your thoughts on the role of Quebec and the provinces and territories in this renegotiation process. Thank you for the question, Linda, and for your work. And thank you for the question. It is really a very important one. The provinces and territories are very involved in our trade negotiations with the United States, not only in the NAFTA negotiations. As you know very well, we have many challenges and issues between us and the Americans, and we always work closely with our colleagues and friends at the provincial and territorial levels. And as you said, Quebec has a unique role because of the importance of its relationship with the United States and the importance of Quebec to the United States. I have said many times now to the American administration that, for example, the electricity in Trump Tower comes from Quebec. So our American colleagues must always remember the importance of our economic ties. As I said, we have already had many consultations with many Canadians. Of course, that includes the provinces and territories, and these consultations will continue throughout the negotiations. With CETA, we saw how Canada is stronger when we work together with the provinces and territories and the cities as well. When they work with the federal government, a Canadian team is the strongest possible team. And Quebec has played a unique role and a very important one in the CETA negotiations, and I would like to thank them for it. I had a conversation on Thursday with my provincial and territorial counterparts on NAFTA. I spoke about the federal approach and we spoke about our intention to continue to collaborate. Many of the provinces and territories will send their experts and officials to Washington for the first negotiations. That's very useful for us. We welcome this approach. And I would also like to say, Randy spoke about the governors and the very important position and productive one of the American governors. I found the same, and I think it's perhaps because the governors understand the economy. They are closer to daily life in the country. Following the involvement of the provinces and Quebec, we all know that initially the negotiation of CETA with Europe, Quebec was very present on the ground. What experience and components do you draw from the CETA negotiations, given that you were Minister of International Trade at the time? What are you bringing to the table? You spoke a little bit about this earlier, about the components that you will draw from CETA. What would you like to see in the renegotiation of NAFTA? The role that the provinces played in CETA was very important. And we will draw lessons from the role of the provinces and the territories in CETA for the NAFTA negotiations. And it's important for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that we consulted the provinces regularly. We received a lot of information from them, and that helped us during the negotiations. Another reason for which the role of the provinces and territories is so important is that the provinces have ties, significant ties. They have the opportunity to influence our partners, and we wanted Quebec's influence particularly during NAFTA with the government of France, with Belgium, and with the Walloons. And concerning our ties with the United States, our provinces and territories have specific ties. For example, Quebec has worked a great deal with the state of New York, and I would like to thank them.
Round, we're going to go in the second round. But Minister, before we go there, I'd like to mention, as you know, we've done a Western tour in the United States, a Central tour, and also Washington. And we mentioned your negotiators and people here, but the people down on the ground in the United States were really tremendous for us, especially putting meetings together. And in Washington, I think one of the most important meetings was meeting with the Ways and Means Committee in Washington, one of the most powerful, and we had a good time with them, so we had some good discussions there. So I'd like to, on behalf of the committee, thank your team on the ground in the United States for pulling together, and we're going to be visiting there again. So we're going to go to second round, and the Liberals are starting off, and Mr. Fonseca, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. Minister, you know, when we look at Canada and the United States, we've had the longest trading relationship in the world. 400,000 people cross our border every single day, $2.4 billion of goods. And in my community of Mississauga, East Cooksville, I have a huge diaspora and very diverse. And they were very excited about our CETA agreement and the amount of trade that they're going to be able to do between Canada and Europe and many of the countries where they have roots in, where they have these linkages. The same thing happens when you look at Canada and the United States. We're probably the two most diverse countries in the world, bar none. And I think about the small and medium-sized businesses within our diaspora that are able to do work, be it the Polish community in my riding, be able to do a lot of trade with places like Chicago, or the Portuguese with Massachusetts, or our Indo-Canadian community. Can you explain to us, tell us how these communities are going to be able to benefit from this trade deal through NAFTA? How will that be able to grow their businesses the same way that they feel that that's going to happen with CETA?
Well, thank you very much for the question, Peter, and for your very hard work on this file. I strongly agree with the direction of your question. I also represent a diverse riding, as I'm sure do very many of us. In my riding in particular has a very strong Portuguese and Italian community, and there's been a lot of enthusiasm around CETA, which is going to enter into force on September 21st. We're so happy about it, and presents real opportunities for those communities in Canada to build an even closer relationship with the communities in the country they came from, and also to use the cultural ties to build some economic benefit for both the EU and for Canada. I really agree with you that our relationship with the U.S. Presents many opportunities of a very similar nature. I like to say when I am speaking to Americans that we're not just friends, we're not just neighbors. So many of us are relatives. It's hard to find a Canadian, and in some of the border areas of the U.S., it's hard to find an American who doesn't have a close personal human connection with Canada. And I think that's one of the reasons that our trading relationship has, over time, been so strong and so effective. The former U.S. ambassador to Canada liked to tell a story about how when he traveled around Canada, he would say, so, do you guys do a lot of foreign trade to companies? And they would say, oh, no, we only trade with the United States. And I think that anecdote tells a lot about how Canadians view trade with our biggest trading partner and with our neighbor. When it comes to the opportunity, you referred specifically to small and medium-sized enterprises, and I think that is an important area to focus on. And those are the enterprises that in the consultations I've personally done, and I know my negotiators have had the same experience. And again, just in Edmonton on Friday, I heard the same message. It's for those businesses that the red tape is a particular obstacle. We've even heard from people who've said they don't bother using the NAFTA preferences because it's so much of a hassle to fill out all the forms. So one of our core objectives, and I think this has particular relevance for small and medium-sized businesses, is going to be to use these negotiations to cut red tape, to continue the really good work we've already been doing on harmonizing regulations, and to make this trading relationship even more frictionless. And again, here, I do want to emphasize we see some real opportunity here in our negotiating approach, because this is really consistent with something we've heard in public and in private from this U.S. administration, that they are focused on cutting red tape, on making life easier for businesses, and this is an opportunity for them to do just that. When I was with the Prime Minister in Rhode Island at the governor's meeting, there was a lot of emphasis from the governors on exactly that point. They said, let's use this as a big opportunity to cut red tape to make things easier for businesses. And I think Mark wants me to stop talking now.
You're doing very well, Minister. This light thing's working. Maybe other committees can start using it. So anyway, we're doing very fine here. And we're going to move over to Conservatives now. Mr. Rich, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister and officials. Gentlemen, good to see you again. I want to just step back one point. I know you were in Beijing late last week, Minister. Did you have the opportunity to raise the John Chang issue with China to make sure that John has a chance to come home soon?
Yes, I did.
Good. And any idea of that?
I raised it directly with the Foreign Minister.
Good.
And he acknowledged that I had raised it. So let's hope that creates some...
Will
I have to interject here, Mr. Ritz. I just remind you, we're going to try to keep to the trade.
Well, this is still trade. I'm just...
Yeah, just I'd like
so
to keep
John will
questions.
follow
That's
up
why we have the
shortly,
Minister here. So, okay, go ahead.
Pardon me?
John will follow up that intervention.
Pardon me?
Ambassador McCallum
He
will
was
follow
with
up.
me. He
Good.
was with me
Okay,
at the
thank you.
time, as were our officials.
Thank you.
But
All right.
I do want to say, I know we're here to talk about NAFTA, but that is an important case.
Yes.
And we have been, as a government, very focused on it.
Yes, I
And
know,
I
you're
was
seized by
glad.
it.
I was
Anyway.
glad to have an opportunity to
Good.
raise it.
Good.
And what I did say to the Foreign Minister was that this was an issue of great concern to Canadians.
Good.
And concern particularly to Canadian businesses.
Good. Thank you. Moving on. I saw your speech this morning, and you talked about in the last few days also that labour and environmental clauses are going to be very important in these negotiations. So I'm wondering why then, when you're using CETA as the gold standard, and we agree it's a great trade agreement, but TPP goes beyond that. there are enforceable clauses, chapters on labor and environment. Why would you not then ratify TPP, as Mexico is continuing to do, and then have 2-to-1 on the Americans on enforceable chapters on environment and labor? Why not ratify TPP to give you that extra strength?
So there are two questions embedded there, and let me take them in turn. When it comes to the labor and environmental chapters, I'm glad to hear conservative support for our government pushing very hard in those areas. I think that holds real opportunity for Canada. I am very pleased with the progress we've made there on CETA, which is a deal that is actually going to be provisionally applied in a few weeks.
But the clauses aren't enforceable. TPP, they are.
Hang on. And that gives it particular value. It's particularly useful in trade negotiations to be able to refer to a trade deal which is actually in force, not simply to something which is written on a piece of paper, but with something which is actually there. I'm aware of those provisions that were negotiated in TPP, and I think they're very interesting, and we will also use some of the ideas from TPP, very much including some of the labor and environmental ideas in TPP, which have particular value because, after all, there was some U.S. input there. But I would point out on TPP, this is a deal which this U.S. administration has rejected.
Sure.
And we need to be aware of that, and we need to be mindful of that. Also, when it comes to TPP, we need to realize that embedded in the body of this agreement, and I know you know this very well, is a provision according to which the agreement cannot enter into force. Even if the TPP 11 were to all ratify that agreement, it does not enter into force without U.S. ratification. And all of our conversations about the TPP need to be based on that fundamental reality.
Right.
I do want to say, though, I was in Manila last week and had very good conversations with many of our TPP 11 partners, including Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, Singapore, and we are very pleased to be part of continued discussions of that group. We also spoke to Vietnam. We're very pleased to be part of continued discussions among that group.
Good.
Canada absolutely sees the opportunities in the Asia-Pacific, and we are pursuing them energetically.
All right, one last point. Softwood lumber was to be done. You had a 100-day plan that's long gone. It was to be done before NAFTA negotiations started. So now, are we to believe that softwood now become part of NAFTA, or is it just going to be left aside until all the NAFTA work is done? There's a lot of people out in BC that are very concerned about their jobs, the futures of mill towns and so on. I mean, where are we at?
I share those concerns. The softwood lumber issue is absolutely a key issue.
When I hit the light, you have 15, 20 seconds. So
Okay. It's a priority of mine and of our government. I, in fact, was speaking, less than 12 hours ago with some key representatives of the BC industry about the issue. And as I mentioned, Martin Moen is my partner in crime on this my particular partner in crime on this file. We are very engaged with the U.S. on softwood lumber. We want a good deal, and we think that is achievable, but we don't want just any deal, and the Americans know that. We want a deal that is good for Canadians. I think at the moment, the softwood lumber negotiations will continue in parallel with the NAFTA negotiations, as has historically been the case. We are open to other modalities, but for now, I think they'll continue in parallel. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. We're going to cut back a little bit on time, so we're going to go to 4 minutes now. Mr. Peterson, you have 4 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today, and thank you to those who've joined you at the table. We appreciate the input from all of you, as always. Now, you mentioned earlier that you met earlier, I think this week, with some agricultural stakeholders in Edmonton, I believe, and I think later this week you're meeting with some labor roundtable, I think tomorrow in Toronto, if I'm not mistaken. But I want to focus on the automotive and manufacturing sector. It's a big employer in my riding of Newmarket Aurora, and I heard you mention Magna today in your comments at the University of Ottawa. So I just want to know, and I know you've put Linda Hasenfratz on the NAFTA Council, which is great. So just how else are we engaging with this sector to ensure that their interests are met in the NAFTA renegotiations?
Thank you for the question, Kyle. And you're absolutely right that the auto sector, which is so important for your constituency, is important for all of Canada. And the concerns of the auto sector, very much including car parts manufacturers like NAFTA, very much including labor, are an absolute priority for us in our NAFTA negotiations. I want to make one other point because Jerry asked me about softwood lumber and I didn't have enough time to answer. So I'll just say quickly on softwood, I do also want to highlight what an engaged partner Wilbur Ross has been in those conversations. He has really gotten immersed in the detail of the file, has really been personally involved, and I really appreciate that. On autos, so we are consulting very actively and energetically, and we're going to continue those consultations as the negotiations progress. We are talking to the big auto companies. We're talking to the car parts suppliers at multiple levels. As you know, it's a really complicated industry. I'm very pleased that Linda is serving on our council. And also a really important piece for us is talking to labor, which understands the auto parts sector very, very well and has an important perspective. One of the things that our auto sector brings to the NAFTA conversation, which is incredibly important and which is going to be an issue that Canada is going to keep bringing up at the negotiating table, is the extent to which our trade with the United States is really integrated and really sophisticated. Flavio Volpe likes to say, we make things together. Don Walker likes to say that too of Magna, right? And that is really the point, that our relationship, particularly in as complex, as highly integrated a sector as auto parts, is really all about a highly integrated sector that works. And one of the things that we are really going to focus on in the negotiations is being aware of that complexity, ensuring that the complexity of that economic relationship is reflected in the negotiations. We're going to work hard to make the trade there even easier. Something else which I do want to really thank all the Canadians who work in the auto sector for is, Randy, where Randy is over there. Randy spoke right at the beginning about the work that we have all been doing in reaching out to our partners and colleagues south of the border. That has also been a sector-to-sector outreach. And I think some of the most effective conversations that have been happening to date have been between Canadians and Americans who build things together. People in the auto sector have been particularly effective in having that dialogue, in ensuring that their American partners are fully aware of how important NAFTA is as a foundation for that very effective integrated economic relationship.
Thank you, Minister. Sorry, we're going We're going to move over to Conservatives now. Mr. Van Kesteren for 4 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here. It's Van Kesteren. Dave, Minister, we all know, we've been here long enough to know that it's really these guys that do the negotiating. It's our job as legislators, as parliamentarians, to make sure that our priorities are the things that are stressed to our excellent, and you've mentioned our excellent bureaucrats too. So I have 3 questions. One question has a sub to it as well too, but these are questions that I would think, as minister, you would go into these negotiations and tell your negotiations, listen, whatever you do, make sure this, and that gets done. I don't think we got a real clear answer on the dairy. So the first question, and allow me just to ask the questions first. Will you trade away any of the dairy access? And will farmers be at the negotiating table with you or with the negotiators when they're there? The second is, and these are questions that are pertinent to my part of the country in Chatham, Kent, Leamington. Will you maintain the flexibility of container sizes in our processing industry? Very important to us as well. The third, will you consider the impact that decisions like carbon tax have on industries like the greenhouse industry in my riding? And then there's a fourth, and I know this isn't part of the trade negotiation, but in your capacity as a minister, will you continue to insist that the bridge gets built? I mean, we can do all the great trade deals we want in this place, but if we don't have access to our market, that is got to be. So those four things, if you could just address those. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for those questions. As you raise dairy, I can't resist asking whether Max Bernier is also with the program here. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Well, I'll answer that question. It really doesn't matter. We've made a strong commitment.
Pardon me?
It doesn't matter. We've made a strong commitment. Yeah, and we're not doing the negotiating. You know, in all due respect, you are so.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist. Look, I was very clear in my remarks this morning, in my opening remarks here, and in answer already. Our government supports supply management. I think from the questions here, we are now hearing a cross-party consensus there. I think what is very important is how we frame this issue, both for our American partners and for Canadians. And for our American partners, it's important to remind them that in the dairy trade, they already benefit 5-to-1. It's important to remind them also that while supply management is our system for supporting our dairy producers, they have their own systems for subsidizing and supporting their dairy producers. And again, as I mentioned in response to an earlier question, it's particularly important in the Canadian public discourse to underscore that. So those will be the points that we're making, and we're very clear in our position there. You asked about container sizes. Again, we're very aware of the value and importance of flexibility there. And I would put that also in the category of the importance for us of cutting red tape and making trade easier. Certainly, I believe that one of the objectives that we share with the U.S. administration is that governments should not be creating unnecessary impediments, frictions, which make trade which make business more difficult. And we really see NAFTA as an opportunity to act and improve on that. You've mentioned the carbon tax. And here I think this may be one of the points where we have to have a friendly disagreement on both sides of the House. We really, have I run out of time?
Yep, we're out of time. Sorry.
Okay.
We're going to move over. I think we have 2 minutes for NDP. Ms. Ramsey, if you could just ask maybe a question. And
Very quickly, will you require that all three parties ratify the 8 core conventions of the International Labour Organization and adhere to the ILO's decent work agenda? And on the environment, can you speak to how you can ensure or be confident that you can even put the words climate change in NAFTA with a president in the U.S. who basically says that climate change is a Chinese hoax?
I'm sorry, Tracy, with the echoing in the room, I didn't exactly get your last point. If you could repeat the climate change point again?
So the point is, my question to you is, how confident can you be that the Americans will even include the words climate change when they pulled out of what happened in Paris? They have a president who claims that climate change is a Chinese hoax. How can you be confident that we will ensure that in NAFTA, where we're going in Canada is protected?
So on the ILO conventions, I thank you for that question. Something that our government is very proud to have done is to ratify the outstanding ILO conventions. Labor is very important to us, and those conventions are a very important way for Canada to be part of an international community of commitment to high labor standards. And the ratification of those conventions was part of our CETA negotiation process. So ILO conventions already in our experience can be part of a trade discussion. Certainly in negotiating with our NAFTA partners, we are going to share with them the value that we believe those conventions have and the value that they have for all economies. And again, I do, as I said in my remarks, that I have now cut off.
No, go ahead, finish up, finish up.
You know, as I said in my remarks, we do really see some opportunity, and it was great to hear that the Conservatives support strong labor protections in trade agreements too. I see some real opportunity here to raise, they did, don't laugh, Jerry, it's true. I see some real opportunity to raise the bar on labor across North America.
Thank you very much, Minister. And we have one more left. And Madam Fortier, you have the floor for 4 minutes. Go ahead.
Merci beaucoup. Merci d'être ici ce matin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us this morning. We know that the Prime Minister and yourself were in regular contact with your American counterparts to raise their awareness about the economic ties between Canada and the United States. Could you please paint a picture of the measures that have been taken since the inauguration of the new president, Mr. Donald Trump, on January 20th, please? Thank you for your question. I would like to start by highlighting something that the committee chair said, and it is that in the work of negotiating with the Americans, of course it is work for the government, but it is also a job for Parliament and for all MPs. And I know that you, the members of the committee, have already done a great deal of work on this issue. And I thank you for it. I would also like to say that this is only the beginning. We have much more work before us, and as you know, the legislative process in the United States is absolutely essential during the negotiations of trade agreements. And you, MPs, as MPs of our Parliament, you have a special relationship and an important one with American elected officials. And I thank you for the work you have already done. And I would also like to ask you to continue. This is only the beginning, and there is much more to be done. In your question, you spoke about the work that we've done since January, and I would like to highlight one other thing, because I already spoke a great deal about the consultations. I would like to speak about another aspect, and it's that our work didn't start in January or February. Our work started last summer, before the American elections. As Minister of International Trade, I asked our officials to prepare materials on NAFTA because we saw that it was an issue in the presidential campaign in the United States. I would like to say that because I think it's important for Canadians to understand the level of preparation on our side. For over a year now, we have been preparing this, and I think that, like with exams and like negotiations, preparation is key. And I would like to thank our officials for the work that they have been doing for over a year now. I would also like to highlight another aspect of our preparation with respect to the discussions with our American counterparts. As Canadians, I think that we understand the American system better than everyone except the Americans themselves. I'm sorry, I've had to wrap up. Oh, okay, one more thing. And because of that, we understand that it is not just our relationship with Washington and our relationship with the White House and the President and the Secretaries of State that are important. those are very important relationships, of course, but there are also a lot of other levels. And I think that the entire Canadian team, including, for example, businesses, are trying to work with their counterparts at all levels, and that is a very important issue.
Kind of wraps us up with the questioning for you today. And again, I'd like to, on behalf of the committee, thank you and your staff for coming here today. And I wish you good luck. You and your team, you've got your sleeves rolled up and you're heading down south of the border in the next few days. And so good luck. And if you need us, give us a call. Okay. We're only going to suspend only for 2 minutes because we're going to go right back with the officials. Any more detailed questions anybody has? We're not going to have to be able to do 2 full rounds, but we're going to try to do almost 1.5.
Okay.
Everybody good to go? Okay. Okay, and I ask everybody to keep their questions towards NAFTA and the future trade agreements with North America. So we're going to start off with the Conservatives right off the bat, and go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that right off the bat, so I'm going to tell you what's on my mind. Thank you all for being here. We're big fans of the work you've done and the great work that you've done, and you've certainly proved that we've got some great people at the helm. I was saying to a reporter was asking me about the last question that I made about the container sizes and the importance of our ministers and government officials understanding, and she didn't understand the question. The response was that we need to harmonize, but Steve, you understand those container sizes and why we're kind of lucky that we had put these things into place a long time ago, and that saved a lot of jobs as a result. It's kind of like when I drive down the 401, and I love to go at a steady speed, and I know everybody does, but when you got somebody up there about a mile up the road is gawking, a mile back you're stopped. And negotiators, and I don't want to put you in the spot, but especially it's so fast. It's something that needs to be seamless. If you're not getting quick responses and government officials understanding these issues to the degree that they should, it can slow the process down so much. So, I'm not trying to tell tales out of school, ask you to do that, but are you finding that your negotiation is moving forward, and are you getting the proper help you need? As Conservatives, I know that's our job as opposition, and we always say the government doesn't know what they're doing. They said the same thing about us, but have you got that confidence level that the people at the helm know what they're talking about and understand the issues that are so important to Canadians and jobs like the ones that Tracy and I, in the auto industry and the ag industry, the greenhouse industry. Have you got that confidence level?
Well, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think that on those kinds of issues and on container sizes, I can tell you I've been familiar with that issue for, 25 years, more maybe. We haven't yet heard from the U.S. and certainly not Mexico as to whether they're interested in pursuing that issue. That may come. But for the moment, I think that we're in a position where, just as we have some issues like that, there are many issues on the U.S. side that are equally of concern to us. So I think we've got a good balance that we will not be pushed too hard on those types of things. I think certainly we are getting the kinds of resources we need. We have a lot of people involved in this negotiations. We're going to have 28 negotiating tables. They'll all be fully staffed by Canadian federal government officials. So we're ready to go, and we have what we need.
Thanks. And you just finished an important. I think it might rate as the most important agreement that we've seen in 25 years, and it remains to be seen how it'll compare to NAFTA. You've had good experience. You've understood how the Europeans conduct business and how they've the complexities that would result from different member states. However there are, what is it, 50 some member states or something, 53 member states that you have to negotiate through with the Americans. Now we've got such a close relationship with the Americans. Can you talk about some of the differences and some of the challenges and some of the advantages to negotiating with our neighbors to the south as to the negotiations that took place across the water?
Well, I think in any negotiation you have to take account of what kind of negotiating partner you have. And for a country like Canada, where we're often the smaller player in a negotiation, we're the smaller player in the negotiation with the EU, we're a smaller player in the negotiation with the U.S., we have to accommodate our style and our approach to some extent to the other trading partner. The U.S. style of negotiating is very different from the EU style. And we will make those adjustments. Plus, we have Mexico, so it's a trilateral negotiation in this instance as compared to the EU. We've been doing a lot of research on what the U.S. will be looking for, not looking just at their stated negotiating objectives, but well beyond that. We have a good sense of what they're going to bring to the table and what the value of it is. And I think we're certainly well positioned to respond to whatever might come. Very well prepared, and the U.S. style is something that we can deal with. We've dealt with for many years. We've negotiated with the U.S. in various configurations, not just in NAFTA, but in other negotiations, and we know them well.
Thank you. And we're going to move over to Liberals now. Madam Ludwig, get the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all the work that you've done and that you will be doing certainly going forward. As I mentioned in my previous question to Minister Freeland, I represent an area that borders on the United States. In fact, we have 5 international border crossings to the U.S. When we were in Washington at the beginning of June, we heard from the House Ways and Means Committee and others across the U.S. regarding the significance and the change with technology over the last 23 years since the agreement was first signed. How do you foresee technology coming into play in terms of the renegotiations? Do you see technology being incorporated as an individual chapter? Do you see it being incorporated across all chapters in the new agreement? And the other point I wanted to stress is that, and ask a question about, is the nimbleness. We heard from the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee in Washington when he talked about the possibility of maybe some nimbleness with the agreement moving forward so we can adapt to some of the changes a bit more expediently than waiting for an agreement to expire. Thank you.
Okay, well, yes, it has been 23 years since NAFTA was negotiated. A lot has changed, and I think there will be a number of areas in the agreement that we want to modernize, bring up to date, where things have changed. We will have specific chapters that will address some of those changes. On the digital area, on electronic commerce, those will be brand new chapters that the original NAFTA did not have. Intellectual property has changed a lot of new technology in that area, so we'll have to be working on those issues. One of the bigger objectives we'll have will be also to use technology with respect to moving goods back and forth across the border. Electronic authorization, automatic approvals for whether you're claiming an NAFTA rule of origin or not. So we can bring that up to more modern times, because some of the existing provisions are timely, they're more expensive, and industry has said we have to move on that as well. Even in areas of movement of people back and forth across the border, we have new professions that didn't exist at that point in time, and we need to incorporate those into the NAFTA. So those types of issues are going to appear, some in individual chapters, but many will be spread across almost the entire agreement.
Okay, thank you. Some of the other areas that came up as well with our discussions in the United States was the area of harmonization. We've heard it before our trade committee, regardless of the trade agreement that we were studying, harmonization was a concern amongst a number of business people. How do you foresee harmonization in the area of, one, in terms of pre-clearance, of the harmonization of customs between Canada and the United States, and to make it not so much a lessening or a thinning of the border that some people like to use, but much more in terms of trying to get together with a more efficient, smarter border crossing so that the flow of traffic is eased with expediency, also focused on security, though.
Well, certainly harmonization is a significant issue that we'll spend some time talking about. We don't really see issues like pre-clearance as harmonization. It's more a matter of coming up with common approaches to have a smooth process back and forth across the border. When it comes to regulatory issues, some stakeholders are calling for harmonization between Canada and the U.S. and Mexico in some cases. But I think that's not necessarily going to be something that we would pursue across the board. Where it makes sense in a specific industry that is very integrated, then we may be pursuing that. Other areas, it's more about making sure you have some kind of regulatory coherence or cooperation to ensure that regulations may be different, but they shouldn't pose an obstacle because they're essentially trying to achieve the same objective. And those, I think, we can deal with more easily. And that's probably the more common approach that we'll take.
Thank you.
Okay, you're only have to be a very quick question and a quick answer.
Sometimes we hear concerns that NAFTA is, negative in terms of the impacts on the U.S. economy. What examples would you give in terms of how do you measure the impacts of NAFTA across North America when we've had such globalization, other injections into our North American economy, and certainly most of us would argue that NAFTA and others have certainly made our North American economy stronger.
Well, I think in the case of NAFTA, and in some of the discussion we've heard, particularly from some commentators in the U.S., we don't think that NAFTA has resulted in all of the losses that are sometimes claimed by some people. We think automation, advancements in technology, and globalization more broadly have resulted in the loss of jobs or the evolution of jobs. Some older jobs now being performed by machines are no longer being performed by people, and that evolution has clearly happened. With respect to NAFTA, I think it can be...
Sorry, we're out of time. We're going to have to move over to the end. I know, but he can get a shot in a little later on in another question. We're going to move over to the NDP. Ms. Ramsey, you got the floor.
I just want to quickly comment on that last train of thought and say that we haven't had any greenfield manufacturing sites, and that's largely attributed to trade deals. The fact that it is more beneficial for companies to go to other countries than it is in Canada. And so that contributes to job loss because there's spin-off jobs, everything that's attached. So if we can't attract those greenfield sites, as we've been unable to under some of the trade deals that we have, it's a very real issue for us. So I have one quick procedural question. So upon conclusion of the agreement, will you table an explanatory memorandum to inform parliamentarians of what we will see in the actual implementing legislation?
It is our usual practice once we finish negotiation to provide explanatory documents to provide a more easy to follow explanation of what has been achieved in the agreement. Yes. Okay.
It didn't happen in CETA, so I'm hopeful that it will happen in NAFTA. I think it's incredibly important to parliamentarians. The next question I have is about Buy America and procurement. The policies, of Buy America have really shut out Canadian companies from significant contracts in the United States. And the Trump administration has said that they want to make things even worse in NAFTA. They'd like to go even further. So is there a commitment that Canada will not accept any preferential, uneven access for U.S. companies to bid on Canadian contracts without reciprocity?
Well, without a doubt, we will be looking for a fair and balanced outcome when it comes to government procurement. We have long expressed concerns about U.S. Buy American policies. We will be pursuing that in the negotiations and looking for improved access. If we are not going to be receiving improved access on the U.S. side, I find it hard to imagine that we would be putting much on the table on our side for increased access.
My next question is about labor, and I'm wondering if you can tell us how you'll address right-to-work states and jurisdictions in the U.S.
Well, on labor, and I think the Minister has said this clearly, we will be pursuing a fairly ambitious outcome. That's with respect to the ILO core conventions. We will be promoting that. We will be also promoting fair labor practices across the three countries. And we do have some concerns about certain practices in the U.S. We will be seeking to pursue disciplines in those areas too.
Okay. Thank you. The next question I have is about energy proportionality. NAFTA's energy proportionality provisions prohibit Canada from reducing our oil and gas exports to the U.S., even if we experience shortages ourselves. Which means that essentially, with non-renewable natural resources declining and climate change posing an urgent threat, will the government pull out of these regressive provisions that are outlined in Article 605 of NAFTA?
There will be quite a bit of discussion on the energy chapter. The U.S. has indicated an interest. We have indicated an interest. And I think the issue of the proportionality clause in particular will be something that we'll be discussing at the table without a doubt.
Okay. My next question is one that the Minister didn't have an opportunity to answer, and it really is around climate change. And the inclusion of the words climate change are incredibly important in this document. We, of course, in Canada are signed on to the Paris Accord, which the U.S. has withdrawn its support from. Oh, sorry, I thought he was calling me. So I really would like to hear from you then. How do you envision us pursuing environmental protections with a country whose president has essentially said that climate change is a hoax? And that's something that's quite public, I think, that Canadians have heard, has pulled out of commitments to the EPA, which impacts the Great Lakes in my region incredibly. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to the challenges that you face and how you will address those.
Well, it's similar to labor, and the minister has also mentioned how we would be pursuing an ambitious agenda when it comes to environment, and we will be bringing the chapter into the agreement, but not only that, looking at much more ambitious objectives in environment than we have in the past. And it's hard to imagine an environment chapter in this day and age it is not going to have some reference to climate change. So we will be pursuing issues related to that when we negotiate the environment chapter.
You only have about 20 seconds, so it'll have to be a quick question, quick answer.
Okay, so my last question really, I would like to give notice of motion because it speaks to a motion that I've presented to the committee, and it really is about the submissions that you've received online, the consultations that you've done as well. And so my notice of motion, I'll read it into the record, that the Standing Committee on International Trade requests that the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and International Trade submit in both official languages, a breakdown of consultations that have been done to date with Canadians on NAFTA, including the dates and names of stakeholders, industry lobbyists, provincial and territorial officials, civil society groups, Aboriginal groups and leaders, academics, organizations, think tanks, student leaders, individuals, outside consultants, and officials within Global Affairs Canada or other government departments, and B, a breakdown of comments submitted to date via email to NAFTA consultations /elena@international.gc.ca and submitted to date via the online consultation form, including the number of comments both in support and opposed to NAFTA, and that the ministers submit this information to the Standing Committee on International Trade by August 31st, 2017. I think that would provide us with the information.
That's just a notice of motion, right?
Yep.
So we're going to move on to Madame Lapointe. Go ahead.
Merci beaucoup d'être avec nous. J'aurais
Thank you for joining us this morning. I have two questions. I believe I have 4 minutes, Mr. Chair. Our committee went to Washington in June, and we spoke about the culture exemption. We were told that the culture exemption is something that must be maintained. But what we heard in Washington was really not along those same lines. You know that Francophones, while there are 8 million of us in North America, it's very important. And recently we've spoken a great deal about our relationship with the United States, but we haven't spoken so much about Mexico. Mexico is also an important partner. I have two questions. Mexico is also part of the renegotiation of NAFTA. I will start, and then Steve will make some additions. I will start with your second question. Of course, NAFTA is a trilateral agreement. Mexico is a very important partner for Canada. I can say that myself, the Minister, Steve, and the team have had a lot of conversations with our Mexican friends about how we will approach this renegotiation. One thing that is important to highlight is that Mexico is very clear that, like us, they want a better NAFTA, where we will have more economic activity, more international trade. We will simplify things for businesses and create jobs. So for us, it is a true partnership among 3 countries, and our objective is to encourage growth and jobs in all 3 countries. Concerning the culture exemption, we are very aware of the importance of this exemption. We have always worked very hard in all our negotiations to maintain this exemption, and in a number of agreements, well, it's a bit different, but we always kept this exemption as a robust exemption for culture. Steve, just to go a bit farther, when I told you when we went to Washington, in September we're going to Mexico. Are there things that we should keep in mind when we go to meet our Mexican counterparts? It's roughly the same thing as with the United States. Just be aware of the integration of our three economies. There are many products where there are components made in Mexico, the United States, here in Canada, and they are assembled in all three countries. There are many products that cross both borders many times. It is an economy that is very integrated. And as the Minister said earlier, we build things together. And that is true for the United States, and it's true for Mexico as well. And I think that that's what arises when we speak with our counterparts. We work together in this space, and it is not that we are competing with them. Often what we are doing is that we are competing with other regions in the world, and Mexico is an integral part of the North American economy. Thank you. Yes. You know that my riding is south of Mirabel. We have Bombardier and helicopters and all that. Do you have a special proposal for the aeronautics sector? More specifically, do you have anything that we should keep in mind when we go to Mexico concerning the aeronautical sector? We spoke about automobiles, but not the aeronautics. Like the automobile sector, it is one that is very integrated. It's another sector where we really need to put an emphasis on changes that can be made. We cannot affect the relationships that have been built since the beginning of NAFTA and even before then. There were factories in Canada that produce parts for Mexico and vice versa.
You've got 4 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, it's I think since before the U.S. election, it's been all hands on deck looking at NAFTA. You know, that's been through our officials like yourselves, our diplomatic corps, and now also on the political side. And I'm glad to see that we've done it for the most part in a nonpartisan way. And we understand just how important this is for ourselves. Now, there's been a great deal of consultation. So through our online portal, meeting with associations, chambers of commerce, and also meeting with many elected officials, business leaders, etc., stateside. Have there been a number of aha moments for you that you've been like, wow, this is a real great idea that we could bring to the table, where we find that common ground, where it's a win-win-win for everybody, that those that you would be able to share with us that you think that we can move on? We've heard about the modernization, the harmonization of regs, etc., but maybe you can go a little more into detail with some of those, and it could be with any sector, and if you can highlight some of those for us.
Okay. Yes, we've heard some common trends, I think, from many of the people that were consulted, different groups. One of the common trends was do no harm, so to try and preserve what we already have access to in the negotiation. Another trend had to do with what is some called harmonization or regulatory cooperation as well, trying to get some coherence in specific sectors. That's another common trend in terms of what we've heard in the consultations. We've heard a lot also about labor mobility. How do we ensure that the services that are provided can be followed through, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a common theme across the different groups that we have consulted with. I think those are the main, and also technology. How do you bring technology, the advances that have been made in the last 20 plus years, how does this get reflected in a modernized NAFTA? That's another point that was made.
Thank you. So those are the trends. How about some concrete irritants that where you've found that there's a solution to those that you know that maybe you can highlight here for us that you could bring to life, just so we can take something back and something that is tangible that we can speak to, be it one of our associations, or like I've got a meeting with in a couple of weeks with the Mississauga Board of Trade, and they're going to want to know kind of something about the negotiations, also some of the things that would be concrete to them that they can think, wow, this would be really really helpful. that we could take back. Also, maybe tell us a little bit about the team that you take down to now the first set of negotiations in Washington, D.C.
Well, in terms of issues where I think we should be able to move to common agreement, win-win-win across the board fairly quickly, it does relate to a lot of the issues on customs facilitation and improving the process at the border. The common complaint we've heard, the U.S. has heard, we do have a very antiquated system for getting NAFTA preferences, for getting goods across the border, not getting advanced rulings, that kind of thing. That can be speeded up considerably through electronic automatic processes that's used in other places. We should have it in NAFTA, and I think we can move there very quickly. Other issues relate to movement back and forth as well, movement of people back and forth. We can speed that up and accelerate it. So if a business in the U.S. is looking to have somebody travel to Canada to work on a subsidiary that may be in Canada, those people should be able to move back and forth without any kind of holds-ups at the border or extra complications. So there's most of the issues that we can move quickly on are of that nature, streamlining, modernizing.
Thank you, and we're going to move over to Mr. Ritz. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and your expertise here today. A couple of questions to all of you that will be up to your ears in this file. Do you feel you have a mandate that will get the job done? We're looking at a January of 18 target. If we have no level of ambition, I guess that's doable. But Steve, you've done this all your life. Is that target just a goalpost, or is there a rationale and a reality that that's doable?
Well, first of all, we've had many discussions internally. We know what kind of objectives we're going to be pursuing in the negotiations. We have a political endorsement of those objectives, so we are very clear on what we're setting out to do this coming week. As to the deadline, well, I think as members will well know, negotiations are difficult to predict. I've predicted the end of negotiations many times, and I've usually been wrong. So you just negotiate and as hard as you can, and they always have a certain rhythm. You never know when you're going to get stalled, when you're going to get delayed, or when you're going to make huge breakthroughs that can accelerate the negotiation. So
that's the fits and starts of negotiation, and that comes down to what we've discussed at times, negotiating momentum. Yes. You start to get on a roll, and you have to get back to someone and ask questions, and then get back to you, so you can continue. Step out of a meeting 24 hours a day. This is going to be a little different because the time zones are better than they were in Brussels. But having said that, I remember middle of the night meetings and calls back to say, okay, here we go to there. Are you secure in the knowledge that you'll have that ability, that negotiating momentum will be yours?
Well, it's
like
really
you've got
hard.
a council you got to talk to now. You've got a cabinet to work through and so on.
Well, yes, but I think in the early stages, I think certainly in the first few rounds, we'll be laying the groundwork. We'll be dealing with the easy issues, getting them out of the way and off the table. Right. And as you gradually go on, you focus in on those most difficult issues that will require some political direction in all likelihood. Mm-hmm. We do have mechanisms set up so that we can get that political direction quickly when we need it to keep pace with the pace of the negotiations. So I think we're well set up.
Have you got an idea of addressing new technologies? How do you make the new NAFTA a living document that can adapt? Like we've seen some tinkering 11 times or something over the 23 years, but is there a protocol in place or the ability to make certain clauses living documents so that you can adapt and adjust to them as is required?
Yes.
Without opening Pandora's box?
Yeah, well, that's the danger. If you have provisions that allow you to modernize or improve on certain elements, without having to start to unravel the whole agreement, then it can be done. In CETA, for example, we have a number of provisions that allow us or even require us to revisit certain issues to see whether they need to be modernized and updated. So we will be looking at that in NAFTA too, not across the board, but in those areas that are most likely to need some kind of updating, we will be looking at provisions that could achieve that.
Have you had the opportunity as the chief negotiator to sit down with Kenneth Smith Ramos? He's going to lead the Mexican delegation. Tremendous guy. I've known Ken, and you probably have for years too, very knowledgeable, just a wealth of information on NAFTA as a whole, and of course your American counterpart. Have you had the opportunity at least to have a phone call and start to get to know each other? A lot of it's personality.
Yeah, well, it is, and there does need to be a good relationship among the negotiators at the table. And I've certainly met with both John Milley and Kenneth Smith Ramos on 2 occasions, face to face, and have also spoken to them on the telephone a number of times so far. And clearly, this coming week we'll be having a lot of time together.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Ritz. And that wraps up our time. And thank you, officials, for coming. And all the hard work you do, not only on behalf of Parliament, but for Canadians. Keep up the good work and good luck in the next few months. You're definitely going to have your hands full. So, folks, we're only suspending for 1 minute because we have 10 minutes of future business to do. So, just everyone leave the room that's not part of the committee.
you.